Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karakura Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing entirely unscripted critical analysis in response to the chapter, as well as discussion of how that chapter connects to the rest of the series, and, how certain spoilers might be actually foreshadow, things like that. So, as usual, we begin with a reading of the chapter that we are discussing today. This is Chapter 78. Meet him in the basement. Oh no, boss! It's 9 o'clock! What? 9 o'clock? Ah, crap. Come on, Bonnie! Whee! What? Still playing games, eh, Bonnie? But we don't have time for that tonight. Just let me get on you. Hey, wait! You're running away? I'm not running, Dandelion. I'll fix you later. Until then, wait here like a good boy. 4-Hoof Drive. Try not to turn to fluff and blow away. What? Oh yeah, well you took the words right out of... Let's ride, man. Move out. Yeah. My. Why didn't you set the timer for earlier? Sorry, boss. Mouth. Are they gone? That was one weird dude, Ichigo. I'm speechless. Dang it all! Who was that guy? Bleach, Chapter 78. Meet him in the basement. What? You're not going? That's right. I'm waiting right here until that guy comes back. What's wrong with you? Stop being a jerk and come on! No! He'll think I'm chicken! Who cares what he thinks? Chad and I are waiting. Aren't we going? Hey! Perfect timing, Orihime. Help me peel this idiot off of the floor. Who are you calling an idiot? Ah! Has so much blood rushed to your hot head that you've forgotten the reason we came here? Rukia's life depends on us. I hope you understand that. Oh. We have no time for your games. Now come. Got that? Ah! Hey. We're a long way from the village. Are you sure this is the right way? Hey. Shut up. According to the map the Elder gave us, it should be right around here. If you think you can do better, why don't you take the lead? I'm not complaining, but this Kukaku person knows the only way to get into Serite without going through the gates, right? So if this person's so great, shouldn't they be living in town like some kind of celebrity? Yeah, that's a good point. No, that would be impossible. Judging from that one's personality, this looks just about right. It's a quiet, deserted area. Don't worry. This one may change residences frequently, but will always build a recognizable house. One glance and you'll know it. One glance. Yes, I see it. There. That? Kukaku Shiba. That's beyond recognizable. See? You could tell with one glance, right? And I wonder in what other ways he's misled us about this person. Kukaku Shiba can't live in town because all the neighbors would throw a fit. This is the place. The banner holder is a pair of arms this time. Very nice. Is it always something different? Come. What's wrong? Let's go. Oh no. We're going to that goofy house. I hope nobody sees us. Thank the gods this area's deserted. What's with that smokestack? It's awfully big for such a little house. And why is the top covered? What's the purpose of that? Halt! Who are you? You're dressed strangely, and one of you is a soul reaper. You're a suspicious-looking lot. Kogane Hiko and Shirogane Hiko will not let you pass. Go, or you will die here. More gatekeepers. Soul Society's been a real pain in the butt. Huh? Mr. Yorichi! Forgive me. I had no idea they were your attendants, Mr. Yorichi. I apologize for my rudeness. We're not attendants. The stairs start right behind the front door? This really is a strange house. I wonder how you get to the second floor. Never mind that. I should have notified you in advance. Great men have big hearts. How impressive. Please wait here for a moment. Kogane Hiko. Yes? Have you brought me an interesting guest? Well, come in. What are you waiting for? Yes! Right away! Shh. Hello. It's been a long time, Yoriichi. What? Kukaku's a woman? What? Who are the kids? Kukaku, I've come to ask you a favor. Of course you have. That's usually the case when you show up. Trouble? Probably. We haven't had an exchange like this for too long. Go on, let's hear your story. I love trouble. I see. I get the picture. Fine, I accept. You do? Sure. If your heart is involved, how could I possibly say no? Just one thing. I trust you, but I'm not so sure about these kids. I'm assigning a man to oversee the operation. That's alright with you, isn't it? Of course. A man? Yes, well, actually, he's my little brother. He's a useless brat, but, well, ready? Wait just a second. I'm opening it, and you'd better behave yourself. Okay, ready, sis. Hello, my name's Ganju Shiba. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance. Ah! What? You two know each other? Ichigo, you've been overreacting to everything since you got to the Soul Society. Are you just tired, or are you worried about us? That is it for Chapter 78, Meet Him in the Basement. I enjoyed this chapter. I also had to take several takes from this chapter because I kept messing up these voice lines. One day I'm sure I'll put out a video where it's just, 1,001 misgotten takes. I still have those recorded and sorted away in places, but it's usually just like fumbling a line, and I don't want it to be that way, even though this isn't, scripted or anything. Obviously a reading isn't, I guess, or it's there's a script in that I'm reading what's there, but I don't edit these, is what I'm saying. These are unedited, so if I make a mistake, I just have to start the recording over again from the beginning. And since it's something I do daily, I don't always have all the time in the world to, just keep recording it until I get it right. Anyway, let's talk about what's going on in this chapter, discuss a little bit of the art, how that's functioning, as well as the story beats. I will say, going into this, I had the terrible, terrible realization between reading last chapter and now that I actually like Ganju as a character, and that's surprising to me. We can talk about that a little bit more later, but anyway, starting this off, I do like that the answer for what was making all the noise in the previous chapter is this massive clock on this dude's back. He's got this big alarm, like, just backpack thing, and I love that. I think that's fantastic. Like, just like that detail being so weird and different and otherworldly, like, kind of helps to sell Soul Society as this kind of, like, if not anachronistic place, because it's already got samurai running around and everything, it's like this weird, like, it's a strange place, which I like that. It helps kind of sell the fantasy. What is interesting is this guy almost looks like Uryu from behind, just by, like, the haircut and everything, but this is, I believe, Crow, or, like, Hawk, something like that. One of those gang members. I mean, we learned their name literally a page ago. What's this guy's name? He's Hawk. Anyway, and that is Fever, who's checking out his clock. which I love that it's a clock on his back, so you can't even read it. So like someone else has to check it out. Um, but yes, of course, Kanju calls his boar that he rides Bonnie, who is pretty cute, has a big bow in her hair or on her tail or whatnot. Is absolutely menacing, and of course, we get like little jokes here. I love that he calls Bonnie, and there's this huge panel that makes it look like Bonnie's just going to trample Ichigo, but instead misses him and completely barrels into Ganju. So you get the sense that there isn't really a great relationship between the two of them. And I think in a lot of ways, maybe like the one thing that Kubo likes to do, one thing that you'll see a lot in this is like this pairing of like partners. There's always some sort of partnership between like two characters that are kind of intimately linked, especially in battle. And you get this a lot with the Soul Reapers, especially like Ichigo. He's got Zangetsu, and he's fighting alongside Zangetsu. You get these interactions between the two, at least in the chapters that we've seen so far, right? But you'll see that in a lot of other characters too. Like you saw that whenever Ichigo was fighting alongside Uryu, and whenever those two were being developed. Even earlier in those other chapters where we had Orihime develop her powers as well as Chad. Chad was paired with defending the character of Karen or Karen, Karen. But and Orihime had Tatsuki there, so there's always these kind of pairings for characters, and of course when Orihime develops her power, she has, the Shunshin Rika, right? And so a lot of characters tend to have like another character paired with them, like whenever it comes to combat, and then that also lends itself to like these moments that are really tend to kind of build both characters, but also can be some comedy here. And so of course, I mean, it's comedic because you'd expect like a pair that works efficiently, like the boar and rider, and the guy riding the boar, right? I guess boar rider and the boar, to be like a little bit more of an efficient duo. But you really get the sense Bonnie hates Ganju's guts and is taking any attempt to kill him. So it like twists that, You think this pair would like work in unison and be like a strong team together, but Bonnie doesn't have any interest in hurting Ichigo and is all just taking the excuse to rough around Ganju. And I love that he's like, "Oh, we don't have time to play," and it's like, you're way to misread the situation, you idiot. Um, of course, Ganju taunts Ichigo. We get the four hoof drive joke, which is kind of goofy. Um, I think that Kua just wanted to draw these cool looking boars. Anyway, I love that they all ride off and that Ichigo has like this like slowly shrinks from the panel as he's not able to really get his like you took the words right out of my mouth as those like shrink down. I really like Ishida just patting Ichigo on the shoulder and trying to like just say like, man, that was a weirdo. But it's great because Ichigo and Ganju have so much in common. They like pick these fights, they get so embroiled in these little conflicts. And as we come to find out in this chapter, Ganju is still very devoted to his family. Like he's really willing to like kind of change face in that way. And so I think there's like a depth there to the character that also reflects kind of Ichigo's in a certain way, and that Ichigo has this big, he cares deeply about his family, that he's like a much different guy whenever he's around his family than like the way that he might be whenever he's picking a fight with somebody at school, that kind of thing. Of course, we get our crescent moon making its little visit to kind of think, oh man, maybe there's going to be some danger on the horizon. As we can tell in this chapter, there really isn't. I do love this cover. I am a huge fan of just like the simplicity of this outfit, the way that the cover wraps around this way, the way that there's like no like the implied kind of line on the end of this, that we get a drawn line for her shoulder, but then it just ends there, and the actual outfit itself doesn't have any line work for the whole top. Like that's just, I think, really really well done. I like the little choker accessory she has. Overall, this is, I think, a really really cute and fantastic portrayal of Orihime, even though she doesn't do a lot in this chapter. I do like her, like the things that she has to say here. But cool Orihime cover nonetheless. And it's very Bleach and like the little like spiral, like the aesthetic. Kubo likes to work in these kind of like 80s sort of, or even like as far back as like 60s sort of disco-y pattern like aesthetics. Like in the way that all of this looks, and the numbering and everything. This looks like very groovy, So I think that too. But Actually, pretty underrated Orihime cover. I don't see this one often, so I was actually surprised by it. I like another detail that I think is really easy to miss in the art here. It's just like the sweep of her hair back to the nape of her neck. Um, it's like you can really tell from the line work and especially how it falls over her neck and shoulder here. Um, that like there's like it feels like there's this weight kind of pulling it back. It's well done manga hair, if that makes sense, which is something that typically doesn't get done a lot. Usually hair is more stylized than it is depicted in realistic fashions. Anyway, typical, Kubo next page, we get a scene shot, we get a character reacting to something, we get the situation, right? I do like Ichigo's stubbornness that he quickly loses sight of this larger goal as he gets wrapped up in these like smaller personal conflicts. And I think this shows like a little bit of the weakness of Ichigo's character, right? So often I'm, praising these Ichigo as this like strong kind of moral center of this series because he gets very personally involved. He has this very, you and me, kind of like quick relationship to things. Like he doesn't want to he doesn't want to protect people he doesn't know about. He wants to protect the people he cares about, the people that he knows, So he cares very much about his lived personal experience and connections. And so the fact that he's got this really embroiled personal connection that he's just made with Ganji, where he's like, oh, I'm going to prove that guy wrong. I'm going to wait till he comes back. I'm going to prove I'm not a chicken. I'm going to whoop his ass. Like Ichigo gets so embroiled in that he loses sight of this bigger mission, right? And I think that's one of his weaknesses early on is that Ichigo, he's got focus and determination for sure, but that focus can become clouded because he takes things so personally, because he gets so personally invested. And so for Ichigo to really grow, he has to learn how to mete out that, like, and have a level of discretion towards his personal misgivings or his personal involvement. And I think that's a kind of cool way to explore what can be a strength and a weakness of a character. A lot of people like to criticize Ichigo and say he's very reactionary, and I think that's I don't think that's a criticism as far as like the manga goes. Like you can have a reactionary protagonist write a perfectly great story, but and I disagree about Ichigo being wholly reactionary as well. I think that's just a kind of a bad take. And the times that he is reactionary like this, it's reactionary in the fact that people have an effect on him and Ichigo, whenever people don't have an effect on Ichigo, he doesn't care about them because they're not a part of his life. Whenever they are a part of his life, then he starts to care about them, and it's natural that he has a reaction because he forges these strong connections, even to people who are aggressors. And so, like that reactionariness is just reflective of Ichigo's willingness to engage with other individuals. And if you compare that to something like, Byakuya, who has an unwillingness to engage with individuals, so much that the individuality of his sister is completely overlooked whenever it comes to the laws of soul society, and then his individual relationship himself to this person who is his actual like sibling, assumably, right? Like, she was brought in from the Rukon guy, but even so, um, his like you've got to assume that there's some connection there, and the fact that he's willing to overlook that, speaks towards like maybe a flaw in his character at the very least, towards what makes him antagonistic in relation to Ichigo. And so that value of someone's individuality, that willingness to engage, it can be a strength certainly, and it's a strength of our protagonist, but it can be a weakness as well. And I think this moment helps to explore that. It's not just comedic, it's not just pointless kind of filler between the next part that's going to be, feel like it's the main, quote unquote, main part of the story, but it shows how Ichigo can get lost in these minor conflicts and how these can really consume him. And it's going to be something that he'll continue to struggle with throughout the manga. And I love that here we have these other characters helping to show that they keep focus. So like Uryu is the one willing to literally drag him out of the door, right? But Orihime and Chad are the ones that are more willing to wait outside. Orihime checks in, right? So on and so forth. Chad just kind of has confidence in whatever Ichigo's doing. And it's actually Yorichi who scratches Ichigo across the face and reminds him the actual stakes, right? So out of everyone there, it's Yorichi who is most focused on the mission, which you might not expect because Yorichi doesn't really have a close connection to any of these characters. As far as we know, Yorichi and Rukia weren't people that ever interacted. As far as we know, Yorichi, like it's like we know Yorichi and Mr. Urahara, right? Kisuke, they have a close connection, and so therefore, surely Rukia might have a connection through Kisuke. But and like that, we get a little bit more of that with Kukaku later, where it's like Yorichi's clearly someone that Kukaku knows, but moreover, it's because Urahara is involved, right, as this connecting factor. So the fact that Yorichi doesn't have that personal connection to all these characters, but still seems to be most focused on this mission and most focused on rescuing Rukia, speaks kind of volumes to where Yorichi's heart is at and where Yuichi is in regards to this mission. Like, it isn't just some duty that they're doing for their friend. It's something that they actually care about, which I like that a lot. It speaks towards Yorichi's maturity and Yorichi's kind of focus and clarity, and kind of helps to balance him out against the rest of the crew right here. Also, speaks a little bit to Yorichi's character that they claw Ichigo across the face. But yeah, I really do like this panel of Yorichi kind of being very serious about reminding Ichigo that Rukia's life depends on him, and then immediately gets undercut, of course, that moment of seriousness as Yorichi headbutts Ichigo. I love these just like cat throws self into flying headbutt at characters. Kind of weird shot from underneath from Ichigo. I think Kubo just wanted to play with perspective a little bit there. Didn't have a great excuse for it, but it's all right. It works enough. If you ever wanted to know what it was like to, be in front of Ichigo in this way, looking up at him, there you go. Anyway, I love how indignant Ryu gets, where he's like, if you think you can do better, why don't you take the lead? It's like, yeah. Ichigo continues to have these cat scratches for a few panels. I'm gonna try to keep in mind how long those stick around before they're gone. I like that Orihime brings up a kind of good point that if Kukaku Shiba is so important, then why are they out in the middle of nowhere? And it's because they have this wacky house, right? And we start to kind of build the character of Kukaku Shiba, right? We also get, of course, Yorichi kind of underselling the house, which I think serves not just as well as a comedic moment, like what is going on with this house. I love, of course, it being given half the page to really, sell how comical it is. I think the thing that works best for me is that it's these ridiculous sculpted arms holding this banner that very clearly announces it's their house. It's got this huge smokestack that's covered at the top. So you have no idea what's going on. It's very suspicious. And then there's this little inauspicious hut, no windows, just doors that lead into stairs downstairs. This is the sort of place that you would go by and you'd be like, okay, something really wrong is happening there. This is some creep's hut. So yeah, absolutely suspicious. And I love that, the way Yorichi reacts to it, as much as it is a gag, I think it also helps to inform how weird and different Soul Society can be. That this is something that's just kind of like, oh yeah, they changed the banner. Nice. They have a banner with arms. That's very nice. Oh, you'll be able to tell the place. And I don't know how much of that, reflects Yorichi's sensibilities alone, or the fact that nobody else is overreacting to it other than our human, Ryoka characters. That's a question. Of course, Chad. I love that here, Chad. We do have him kind of being quiet in this chapter in the background, but we do get a little bit of him reacting to things, which I appreciate that he's at least pictured here. Of course, we bring up the smokestack and it's covered. Inevitably, that will get answered. I do love that there's a little bit of movement up here. It's easy to miss, but off the top of the knuckles, there's these two guardian watchers, right? And they hop down and quickly call them out, and it's Kogane Hiko and Shirogane Hiko, which Shiro is white, and I think Kogane might speak towards I don't Ko is typically prefix or suffix for small, but I'm pretty sure Kogane has something to do with metal. I could be wrong off the top of my head, but if you know exactly kind of how these names translate, not that they really give us a lot of insight into these characters, but it is my first read of this, I kind of stumbled over these names. I'm like, oh no, that's the word Kogane and Shirogane, and then Hiko, which is the rest of the name. Anyway, these kind of guardians that appear, and I love that Ichigo is already fed up with gatekeepers. But the second that Yorishi shows up, and they're clear that they have the pass, right? Heading on down immediately. I as much as I do like the kind of way that this is laid out, I do think that this is a kind of rough panel structure, and it's not something you're going to see a lot from Kubo. But the fact that like we follow this down to this part of the page, but then there's immediately dialogue over here, but this isn't the dialogue you have to start with. You have to like, there's nothing kind of visually bringing us back up here. In fact, so much of this panel wants us to move our eyes down the panel. That and the actual text, the flow of this panel, I think, is a little weird. I read it here and then here, and then back up here and then down. I think you're kind of supposed to read it right, left this way, and then right, left this way. Nevertheless, I think it breaks up. Like Ichigo's thought bubbles really, in a way, break up the dialogue that would have worked a little bit better here. Like just like this, I'm apologizing. I apologize for my rudeness. Well, I should have notified you in advance. Great men have great, like big hearts, right? It's essentially like the back and forth that's happening. But Ichigo's thoughts break that up in a way that I don't think really lends the scene anything other than a little bit of confusion to read. I do like this panel of them descending. It's just that I wish that this descent panel was justified on the right side of the page so that we would descend into whatever our next panels would be. It descending us over here just kind of leaves us in no space over here on the left side of the page before we have to kind of hard reset to the right. And in a way, maybe that gives you the sense of transition within a single page. I can assume for that. But, like it kind of feels like because you see the door and then you're looking back at the door, which is already kind of a weird, like, take. Instead of getting to see, like, down into the stairs, you're looking back up at the door, which is kind of weird. But then also, yeah, like as much as I do like the composition of this panel, text speech bubbles aside, I don't think it fits for the whole page composition as well, unless the point is to disorient us. But I don't think it is a bewildering and strange house, but I don't think it's that much disorienting. It's just a staircase straight down, right? And so I think visually on the page it should still be that, and it's not here. And that's a little disappointing, because usually Kubo handles that sort of thing really well. I think he just had the idea for this and didn't really execute it as well as it could be. But hey, it's not that big of an issue, but it is something that I will bring out things whenever panels work really well. I have to bring that up. Whenever they don't, throws me off as well. This is another one. Man, this page has a lot of stinkers for me, huh? Here you can tell that there's somebody speaking through the door, right? And we find it's Kukaku Shiba. But I fumbled this line like 2 or 3 times, and almost did on this reading as well. But there's this bit where we have this expressive, surprised face, but it's in response to the welcome in, what are you waiting for prompting. And so I wish that this response would read a little bit quicker than the face would, because whenever I come to this panel, I get the face and expression before I start to read this dialogue, and I see the exclamation points in this dialogue, and I start to think, oh, this is this guy. He's really surprised by, this previous panel, and he's responding in a very exclaiming way. But no, this is what Shiba's saying, Kukaku is saying, and then that's his reaction. And that's something that I think could have been layered differently. I think the welcome in, what are you waiting for? I think the way that I would maybe structure this whole page, if I was going to go through it, is I would have these 2 panels. As much as I like this like long panel with the guy in the front and everything, I would maybe have these 2 panels serve as top of the page panels, perhaps. And yeah, I think this is what I would do. Is I'd have these at the top of the page, the entering, the seeing down the stairs, and then this I would actually flip the other way, so they would be going from top left to bottom right. Although for dialogue reading reasons, that wouldn't be exceptional. I don't know. I would try to have the staircase fit across the entire fit of the page, like a full page length, or width, I guess. Full page width panel instead of like half page length as it is and half page width. so that you really get the sense of like this like kind of stairs going down across the way. But I would want them to lead. I would want the stairs essentially, or the dialogue flow or whatever, to lead us to this panel where they're coming down, and then I would make this 4 instead of 4 laid out this way. It would just be 4 vertical, because again we have that sense of dissension. Either stack them all on top of each other vertical, or stack them right to left vertical. If we're going to come down from the stairs, I think the coming down from the stairs could work as a full, like again, full width of the page. So like, oh, like, please wait here for a moment, Kokani Hiko, you brought me an interesting desk. But then I would also have like another panel of the door. So it's like, you brought me an interesting desk, another panel of the door. Well, come in. What are you waiting for? And then the response. I know it's a lot to cram in a page, but I think you could make this work more efficiently. And I think that this speech right here, this text right here, should have its own panel, because I think that works even better as a joke and even better as a prompting moment of like, oh, have you brought me an interesting guest? And then it's just another panel of door. And it's like, what are you waiting for? Bring him in. Like, stop ruining my cool, moment, right? But I do like that we have her tattoo is for Sky, which Tattoos on the Sky, notably, is a fantastic track that you should go listen to. I guess I'll give a little bit of the side on that. So exists what's called the Bleach Beat Collection. It's a series of CDs that they put out where the voice actors, the seiyuu, the Japanese voice actors for each of the characters, actually performed on a number of musical tracks for those characters. And the music was like to reflect that character's sensibilities and their personality. And some of those are really good. Other ones are, whatever. But worth looking up the Bleach Beat collections for characters that you like from Bleach, certainly. But I think everyone should probably give Tattoos in the Sky from Ichigo's voice actor. I think it's Morita Morikazu, something like that. But Morita, I know for sure is him. But yeah, look up Tattoos in the Sky. Tattoos on the Sky. It's such a good track. It's like one of my favorite ones from like all of the Bleach Beat collection. Definitely one worth listening to, and one that I feel is like, even though it's this ancillary product, it feels connected to the rest of Bleach in the same way that like the anime openings do. At least for me. If you've actually listened to Bleach Beat collections, let me know. If you've never heard of them, give them a listen. Let me know what you think, because it's something that, as often as I see, like, there's a lot of Bleach channels cropping up, especially lately, because, the anime is coming back, right? And so often people will talk about, like, the anime or the manga or these character analyses, etc., 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 the gacha game, whatever. People hardly ever talk about the soundtrack to Bleach and, like, how the anime kind of nailed the atmosphere with that, especially Shirase Gisu's all of his work on that OST. It's been brought up with the trailers that we've had for the newest adaptation, but it can't be stated like enough that the music that they made for Bleach is phenomenal. But even more so, yeah, I never hear anybody bring up the basically the two things that never get brought up, even though I'm a huge fan, is the live action rock musicals, which there are a couple of those and they're pretty good. The costuming especially. They mostly focus on Soul Society, so if you're still new to all the Soul Society stuff, maybe finish that part of the manga before you watch the Bleach rock musicals. But otherwise, yeah, the Bleach Beat collections, most people, it feels like, have never heard of them, or they never bring them up, despite them being like a very interesting part of the franchise. Anyway, here we do get Kukaku Shiba, and I did linger on this page here so we could spend a little bit of time to take them in. She's a kind of prominent character, and we've been waiting to see her since she was on the cover of this volume. Obviously, weekly readers would have been waiting to see her since they heard the name Kukaku Shiba, and there was all this seriousness about it, right? So I don't think it's really ruined by having the character on the cover, because you don't know, hey, that's Kukaku Shiba. There's nothing to really give that away, other than maybe guessing, but that could have been anyone. There's a lot of characters introduced this arc, right? And so, I love that Kukaku's got like these pillows that continue to have this like whirling sort of symbol, this spiral that she has on the middle of her outfit. But also, she's all kind of bandaged up. She's missing an arm. She has a sword tied to the what's left of her amputated arm. Um, she's in this very like lounge pose. Looks like, showing off a lot of skin. Obviously meant to be kind of like a physically attractive character, but also someone that looks like very sort of like otherworld. Like she's definitely supposed to feel exotic in a way, not just from her tattoo or like the way that her hair is kind of messily wrapped into this banded, like not even bandaged, but like this crazy like headscarf situation. Um, there's just a lot of like elements of her design that kind of speak towards this character being fantastical and otherworldly. And I think her exaggerated proportions are meant to do that as well. That it's not just supposed to be like, oh, hey, big boobs, but that her proportions and the way that she is presented is meant to be like, hey, this is a character from another world. This is a character that is like from a fantasy world, right? So I think her design does a really good job of that, and this is really Kubo showcasing that design and showing it off, to you, the reader, to kind of introduce you into this new arc where we're going to be meeting more and more of these otherworldly characters that are much different from who we expect. Of course, everyone's surprised that Kukaku is a woman. Um, it comes as a bit of shock to our entire main cast. And of course, Yorichi doesn't miss a beat, kind of addressing and staying on topic, which is, on brand for the character. I love this like short exchange of like trouble, probably, and Kukaku has a pretty serious expression. Notably, Kukaku's face reminds me a little bit of Tatsuki's, just a little bit. Worth, I think like it's easy to kind of see her almost as like a long-haired Tatsuki. Obviously, the rest of her body is differently proportioned, but especially you can see a bit of it in the face and the hair, and in a little bit of her expression. But yeah, I really do love, and this is where she differentiates herself from Tatsuki. I really love that we do get to finally get this, oh, I love trouble moment. It's really defining, I feel, for her. That we get this very like rough and tumble troublemaker character. She wants to get up to it, and here, yeah, she's smoking her pipe. She's agreeing to the terms here. Obviously Urahara's involved, so she has some in depth. She clearly Urahara holds sway over here one way or another. That like not that she's in literal debt, but that she feels indebted to him, and that she has a lot of trust for Yorichi. And so, the fact that she doesn't trust these other guys is that she's going to send her brother, as we learn that is to be Ganju. But yeah, I think Kukaku has a really, really strong showing in these chapters, like right here. So really, like, there's not a lot of... Usually whenever a new character gets introduced, it can be difficult for them to make waves. Some of them it makes sense, if like the squad member in Renji's squad who was helping Renji out whenever he was cutting up pickles, right? Like that one kid, I still can't remember his name, if it was even mentioned, but the guy that's taking care of Rukia in the cell is who I'm referring to. And like that, sure, maybe like that's the point, is that he's a more minor character, so he's not going to have this bombastic design. He's not going to have as much focus given to his expression, to his interactions. But by the same right, I think having those less overstated designs, I mean, like really the only special thing about him that I can remember detail-wise is that he's got some of the tattoos that are similar to Renji's, but not nearly as many. And so, like compare that design here to Kukaku's design, where we get the sense visually and just on the page, and by the way that she is, put front and center and given this kind of magnificent opening, and kind of teased out in these ways that this is an important character moving forward. And I like that a lot, that we get this like real sense of the magnitude of who she is, not just from the context of the story, but also through her presentation. And I think that's something that will continue to be seen throughout all of Bleach. Kubo really has a strong sense of kind of presenting these characters in a way that often the characters that have understated designs end up being kind of understated characters, whereas the ones that have these more over the top designs do end up being more over the top. That said, that can be kind of disruptive at times. Like as we saw with Ichimaru again, all the captains tend to have very similar sort of outfits, their captain's cloaks and their Shinigami robes, which that's another thing, is a lot of the Shinigami are going to look the same costuming wise. They'll have little bits of flair, like Byakuya has his scarf, Renji's got his goggles, etc., things to set them apart, usually hairstyles and expressions, as well as their body type. But whenever Gin shows up, none of that really seems all that special to him. He's a little lanky, and he's got obviously his hair's just like a regular kind of bowl cut of hair. Maybe it's more notable in the anime because it is colored kind of white silver. But in the series, in the manga, it's like, okay, well, that guy just looks like a guy. What's he gonna do? And then it turns out that he is this powerful captain class character, and that he's one of the first Shikai that we see. Certainly the first Shikai of any captain class character, right? As he pulls it out and knocks Ichigo out of the gates with it, and has that kind of iconic bye bye moment. And so yeah, it's interesting that we can have those kind of designs that are to an extent understated comparatively, and that those can be characters that don't end up doing a lot, but they can also be characters that really surprise us. So once more, I think that's that's something worth mentioning about. I think that Kubo does really well is his character design is always pretty on point for how he wants to involve the characters in the story, at least in the moments that we're meeting them and that we're doing things with them. How it develops from there will change, but yeah, I do like that a lot, and I'll have more to say about all that as the series goes on, because I feel like the designs are pretty significant. And speaking of design and significant design, here we do again. I mentioned this at the volume cover in the beginning of the volume, but it's unclear. Again, she has a sword just like Ganju does, tied around behind her, and it's unclear if this is meant to be a Shinigami's blade is Zanpakuto or not, right? I mean, it's got a very ornate hilt. It seems pretty distinctive to her, but it could just be a regular weapon. As we know, Ganju has a weapon, and it doesn't seem to be a Zanpakuto. Same thing with Jidambo, he had those axes, and those didn't seem to be his Zanpakuto either. So, characters can have these very unique and ornate weapons that are specially customized for them, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a manifestation of their soul. But that is what we see here with her, so I think we're left to wonder, how that is the case. Of course, the biggest thing that we're probably meant to wonder is this person that is so reclusive and strange, what her deal is, why she's missing an arm, etc., etc. And that all gets answered fairly shortly. Not in this chapter, but shortly enough. It's kind of weird. Kukaku feels like a much wider character from the front, and then you see her from the side, and she's actually kind of real thin here. So she's actually a bit dainty, even, which is wild to think about, because whenever I usually think about Kukaku, I'm thinking almost an Amazonian build, like someone who's very tall and well built. But she actually seems rather thin and frail almost in this shot. Curvy, sure, but seems like the type of person that you could pick up and throw over her shoulder, which isn't usually the way I think of her in my mental image. I do love that she kind of writes off Ganju as a useless brat, and that she's already admonishing them, oh, you have to behave yourself, and he's like, oh wait, okay. I tried to play that up in my reading a little bit, but yeah, here we have him, wearing much more comfortable clothes. This is why he had to rush home, because he had to dress up and meet these people, right? He had to attend to his sister, and so yes, this is the reveal that, of course, that it is Ganju Shiba. He is Kukaku's younger brother, and of course they share the same black hair. I don't know that their eyebrows are all that same. They have a very similar sort of knitted brow. It's very pulled forward that way. You can see it kind of arcs in. She has a very kind of wide face, like very, very wide eyes, and you could really get the sense of that here. Whereas, yeah, Ganju here he's being pleasant, but most of the time in the previous chapter we saw how he looked, most of the time. I don't think he shares the cheekbones that he has that are pretty prominent aren't shared with Kukaku as far as I can tell, but he's very, very like brick-headed kind of looking guy, right? And yeah, here's that knotted up brow. It's very similar to kind of what Ichigo has, and I love that she's just like, oh, you two know each other, and that's essentially the big reveal of the chapter. I do like this little in between where Uryu is wondering if Ichigo's tired or if he's worried about everyone else because Ichigo has been so like, I'm gonna take care of this gate. I'm gonna take care of this. I'm gonna deal with Ganju. We can't let this guy rough us up. Like he's trying to be very proactive. And as we know, Ichigo kind of overcompensates by wanting to protect others. Right? That he has this deep kind of fear of being unable to protect the people he cares about. And so I like this little in between. Sometimes we just get like, oh, here's what some of these gangsters' names are. Here's the name of this child, or here's like a little gag. But this moment I think is really interesting because it's I think a moment that shows that Uryu understands Ichigo a little bit better than he did before, and that Uryu's kind of starting to actually consider that maybe Ichigo really really does like have a little bit of that discomfort, and this overreaction, this need to protect all these other people that's surfacing. Um, and that might certainly be the case. And if that is the case, I think that's something that's a little subtle, actually. If we hadn't had this bit, I don't know if that's something that I would have come across, just thinking about it. And so it's interesting to see the sort of things that Kubo intends, because it's clearly something intentional. Now that I'm reading that way, now that I have this to confirm that like Ichigo is very much jumping in front of danger, very much trying to get himself involved. So much so that it's distracting from their mission, right? He's again been overreacting, right? It's not the appropriate amount, and it might have been spurned on after that encounter that they had with the cleaner in the Don guy, right, where they were all pretty much in a life or death situation immediately, and Ichigo at that point, he didn't have anything that he could really do to help everyone there. And so now that he's got these things that he can do, like he can fight Jidambo, he can rush forward, he can, scrap with Ganju, so on and so forth. And so I think that's maybe coming out of all that is that Ichigo's realizing like, he might not be able to protect all of his friends that he's come here with, much less, can he even rescue Rukia, right? And so maybe there is a little bit of trying to kind of talk a bigger talk than he's really capable of holding up. Who knows, right? But at the very least, he's worried about these people, that he has these concerns, and the way that he's projecting those concerns is through being overprotective or overreactionary, even. But yeah, that's it for this chapter. All in all, I'm a fan of it. Of course, I like Kukaku's entrance a lot. There are a few page things I do like. A lot of these like this like moment of quiet and them all like freaking out. The way that we have little like Twiggy Yorichi approaching Kukaku over here. We get Kukaku's butt, but we also see the way that her but we also see the way that her outfit connects in the back, which I do appreciate that we get a kind of full look. This sort of twin-tailed hair, which is kind of wild, reminds me of like a dove-tailed bird or something. Is it the right kind of bird? Probably. I don't know, sparrowhawk or something like that. Whatever you call those things. I'm gonna go Google all of this after this read and be completely wrong. But yeah, lots of them in the art that I like in this chapter. Lots of really great spreads like that. Strong start. A lot of things happen in this chapter. There's a lot of movement. We have a couple distinct scenes. And all in all, I think it works really well to get us to the next scene and then really to tie together all that stuff with Ganju moving forward. Because now we know Ganju is going to be joining our main party, right? And so that whole character introduction, which felt like maybe it was setting up like a minor antagonist or kind of like a character almost like Kon even, Khan, right? Kanpaku, Konpaku? I don't know. Pronunciation. It's not my forte. I'm not Japanese. I'm not a Japanese man. I do not speak Japanese. So, I figure it out. But, you know who I'm referring to. That's all that really matters. Anyway, I like this chapter. I think, like I said, despite a few misgivings here and there, I think overall it works. It's effective, and it does a lot of things to kind of build our cast and build our characters and get us to the next point, which is essentially, okay, who is Kukaku Shiba? How are we getting into the Soul Society? What is Kukaku's relationship to Yorichi and Urahara? And, how is Ganju going to assist? What's Ganju's role going to be in this? I think all that's fascinating stuff for where we are in the story. And so it's cool to get a lot of that, right? I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know. Let me know how you feel about this chapter. But otherwise, I'm going to hop into talking about how this connects to the rest of the manga, connections and spoilers. So, yeah, let me get right into that. One thing I will say, I mentioned earlier, I was talking about those character designs, and how some character designs can really be understated and underrepresent kind of the significance of a character, or be overstated, and usually that character tends to be more prominent, right? Like, look at someone like Mayuri. And I pulled up Gin as an example. I think Gin's a great example of an understated design. That's the whole point, is that he's like a snake in the grass, right? That he does look insidious and villainous, but then that's he has so much of his design is meant to trick us, either into a false sense of thinking he's not that important of a character when he really is, or into thinking that he's more vile of person than he really is. And I think that's a huge part of his character that's represented in his design. And obviously the same goes for Aizen, right? That Aizen's design is supposed to be very disarming until, he slicks back his hair and he looks like top 10 anime villains of all time. But, I bring that all up because Kukaku has a very wild design and a very otherworldly design for a character that we know doesn't get a lot of prominence in the story. And I think the reason for why her design is that significant, and why she has a chapter cover, other than being pretty significant in this moment, she is the one that helps the whole Ryoka invasion pop off. Other than that, though, I think the reason why her design is so important is because even now, Kubo's aware that the Shiba family is going to be Ichigo's family, right? He knows that Ishin is Ishin Shiba. He knows that this is going to be the case. And you can see the design elements that are shared between the characters. I brought up the knotted brows specifically. But, there's clearly some shared design space between the Shibas. It's neat that you can kind of see a lot of Kukaku in Kaien, I feel. Like, Kaien represents almost like a synthesis of Kukaku and Ichigo, which is kind of interesting. Obviously, we won't get Kaien's design for a few chapters yet, but it is sure to come. I mean, he's already been mentioned, of course. But, yeah, I think the reason why her design's so prominent isn't just because it's a cool moment right here, and obviously Kubo doesn't know for sure how big a role she'll play in the full of the manga, but at the same right, I think that she was given such a striking and memorable design because she was meant to be a part of the main character's family, a part of the Shiba family. And so even though her role within the larger narrative isn't like something that quite fits that design as well, I mean, I think it still fits and I think it's still fine. It's just thinking about okay, well, if you're going to spend that much time portraying this character and building this cool design space, shouldn't the character be more significant? And the answer is not always yes. But I think the significance that she has personally to our protagonist is why she's handled the way that she is, that she's given a bit of reverence on the page, outside of the immediate and obvious. But let me know your thoughts. What are your thoughts on some of these designs that we're getting in this chapter? Because there's a lot of interesting design work in this chapter, especially. In the last couple, but especially this one and the previous one with Ganju and all the thugs and this guy with the clock on his back, and Kukaku and her guardians and all of that. And so I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that. Make sure to tag, if you are talking about spoilers, make sure to make that clear in your comments before leaving it. Just because I don't want people who are, reading Bleach for the first time to get spoiled on things like the Aizen reveal, of all things, are the elements of Gin's design being related to his betrayal and things like that, right? So, we'll get there when we get there. We'll talk about it publicly when we talk about it publicly, but I do want those things to stay spoiled, and I will delete comments that are intentionally trying to spoil things for other people. Without giving fair warning. Because, I mean, as much as I don't think spoilers ruin a story, I think that someone should be free to engage with a story without having that sort of thing. And yes, I know Bleach is like over 10 years old. People, like, it's your fault for going online and getting spoiled for it, especially if you're coming to watch Bleach videos. But I try to respect that. I try to respect people's, initial reading and not really have as much of a, that sort of control over it, right? I don't want to ruin their reading if I can avoid it. Not that it's something that really, spoilers don't tend to ruin things for me, but I can see how they do that for other people. I was talking about like that troubled kind of connection, and again, I keep realizing more and more how much Ganju is a busted parallel for Ichigo, right? If you take White and Ichigo, the whole horse and his king thing, right? And you extrapolate that out to Bonnie and Ganju, right? Like, with like Bonnie being like, Ichigo's version of White, right? Or Zangetsu, really the true Zangetsu. The horse and the king situation. I was just thinking about that. I think that's hilarious. That we have Ganju as this partner, and even at this point where it's old man Zangetsu, right? Ichigo has so much more of a like bond there, and they're already kind of fighting as partners. And Ganju's partner rolls up and like completely avoids Ichigo and almost kills Ganju. He's like spitting out blood, you know. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. But then eventually mounts the boar and gets away. So like there's still a partnership there. It's just like it's trouble and it's always at odds, which is the way that Ichigo's partnership is, especially with Shirosaki or White, right? So yeah, captivating, right? Like if you think about it in that lens, because whenever I first watched Bleach, whenever I first read Bleach, I never thought of Ganju as this Ichigo parallel, and on this read, I really am seeing him that way in a lot of ways. Yeah, he's like Ganju almost hits me as what Ichigo would be if Ichigo had no charisma and we were seeing him from the point of view of another character. Like that's what it hits me as. Like Ganju is like the way that other people might see Ichigo is the way that we see Ganju, if that makes any sense. And so I don't know. There's a part of me that loves it. Like imagine the way Ulquiorra sees Ichigo. Like that's like this fucking Ganju dude coming up on me, rolling in here. That's the way that I take it, at least. And so I think it's made me kind of way more interested in Ganju and way more. I mean, I've been enjoying him a lot more than I did on my initial read, but also I'm not, like a teenage boy. So I think I appreciate like obnoxious or weird characters a lot more now that like I can see how they're functioning within the series and like how they allow these moments of interaction and growth for other characters and like define things about the setting and define things about like everything. Whereas whenever I was young, I was like, oh, that guy's just annoying, you know. And I think that's one of the things that some series handle very poorly. Is that some series don't get that like those characters are meant to be there as foils and as build up and like as like examples for the kind of character this setting can create, so on and so forth. Some series just make a person obnoxious. And I'm not trying to call out Demon Slayer, but I'm calling out Demon Slayer, yo. This is happening twice in a row. No, it's just there's some characters that like I think if their character archetype is this guy is a loser, or if their character archetype, like if the whole conceit of the character is this person's annoying, you need to do something with that, right? And we'll talk about Omeda when we talk about Omeda, but we've got Ganju right now, and I think whenever I was younger, I didn't appreciate Ganju, and I was like, that guy's annoying. He's a loser. He's not powerful. He's not strong. I don't like him. He's ugly. All that. Whereas like now, I find myself liking the character because of all of those things. And especially because of how, in relation to all these other characters, he is the way he is. In relation to the setting, he is the way he is. Again, people love to shit talk Bleach's world building, but I think Ganju is a perfect example of Bleach's world building being great. That we have this character that is very much a product of the Rukongai society, the disparity between Soul Reapers and the average souls. This guy who really blames the Shinigami for the death of his brother, right? This guy who's like very emotionally entrenched in this conflict, and it's made him into this kind of pathetic man. Um, yeah, there's so much there that I think is fascinating stuff that really shows a lot of things about the world without just telling them to us, right? And that's world building. That's effective world building. It's not expository garbage. It's not spinning a whole arc in Hueco Mundo, which we already did, buddy. We did that. But there's people that like want everything told and shown to them instead of being evoked. And there's people that can't read subtlety and don't want to engage with the part of fiction that is cooperative. So much so that whenever a series is written in a way that you're supposed to kind of pick up on all these subtle details accrued and extrapolate things yourself, a lot of people won't, and they'll just be like, "Oh, well, it never explained that." So yeah, I feel like that happens with Bleach a lot, and it's easy for me to just call those people like speed readers or low IQ or whatever, or write them off in that way. But I like critically engaging with things. I don't know if you could tell from this entire series and the length of these videos. I don't like being dismissive of stuff. I like to engage with it, and especially if something bothers me, I like to know why it bothers me. Or if I don't like something, I like to express and figure out why. But I also want to find ways to enjoy things. And if you like, as much as I'm talking about shit talking Demon Slayer, if you enjoy it, like that's the whole point. Like enjoy your entertainment, Like don't let me stop you from enjoying something. I just ask that you be informed and be critically engaged, and not like you don't have to be super like, oh, I know all the ins and outs of something or whatever. Whenever I talk about critical engagement, I just mean like having an awareness of yourself and like an actual like depth to the way that you engage with things. You can like something for simple reasons. That's fine. Like I don't think the simplicity of a thing makes it worse. I think there's that perspective goes around a lot, kind of erroneously. This idea that if something's simple, it's not as good as something that's complex. As if, Oreos aren't delicious, right? Like, yeah, it's not an over the top, fanciful dessert, but it's still pretty tasty, right? Like, just like bake like a tray of brownies. That's really simple, but delicious. Oven baked chicken, simple, easy, not hard to make. Anyone can make oven baked chicken. It's still going to be really tasty, right? It's still going to be something that's worth indulging in. Food metaphor, because that's what people who are uneducated do. We make food metaphors. Oh no, I'm always self-critical on that. Food metaphors are an easy go-to because everybody eats food. And tangents of tangents here. Point is, enjoy the things you enjoy, and if you don't enjoy something, don't waste extra time with it. Easy peasy. And I think that if you enjoy something for a simple reason, that's fine. I feel like if you really like something, it's worth enjoying it in its full depth and its full scope. And that's why I'm rereading Bleach, because I have a different perspective from whenever I read it originally, and because I want to give it that more critical passover. Because whenever I engage with it as a young lad, all the way through grade school, through high school, through college, through grad school, and even now as they're coming out with new chapters and the anime is coming back, but for a lot of that I engaged with Bleach just as like a fun story that I enjoyed about these characters that were just like fun and cool and interesting and had neat powers. And I think it's fine to enjoy something for those reasons. If you like something, it doesn't matter why you like it. You like it, it's fun. But if you like, I also feel like again that sort of critical engagement, that more comprehensive engagement, is something that you should lend to the things that you really care about. And I really care about Bleach. and something that I've always tried to teach people, not about Bleach, but about engagement in general, is that I think that's the mark of education and the mark of perhaps maturity. Not that it makes you smarter, but the fact that you're able to actually critically engage with things, right? That's one of the skills that we try to teach. A lot of people are like, oh, why should I take these English courses, especially in past high school? Trying to teach college English courses to someone who's going to get a business degree, right? It's like, well, what do I need that? And the idea is, of course, you speak English, but it's about critically engaging with things. It's about being able to say, I don't like something or I like something, and being able to actually express and articulate why. That's significant. That's important. And I think that's a skill everybody should have. So it's that literacy that lets us interact with and make sense of the world. So whenever people shit talk Bleach for reasons that they don't articulate, that are not even reasons that they came to themselves, yeah, it frustrates me. Not just because Bleach is a series that I enjoy, and a series that as I'm rereading it, I'm realizing is better than I thought, certainly from a narrative point of view, and even artistically in a few ways too. But moreover, it's the sort of thing where it's like a lot of people's complaints about Bleach, I'm realizing, are incredibly shallow, misinformed, and usually just representative of what somebody else who was influential said dismissively, or that they've read online somewhere and they thought, oh, well, that sounds like good critique. I'll just put it in my back pocket to pull out so that I can sound like I'm informed. But it's not. It's sophistry. It's not, or sophistry. It's not actual, things that you've come to a conclusion on your own. It's not informed by some sense of like actual engagement. It's dismissive, and it's it's not even your dismissiveness. It's someone else's, and I think that's such a shitty way to be about anything. Because it's like, give everything a try. And if you don't like it, at least you can say why you didn't like it. Like, at least you can figure that out, and that'll help you grow. But, like, don't rain on someone else's parade, especially if you're bringing something as weak as that. Anyway, that's my hill to die on. I like Bleach, y'all. But, yeah, moving forward. Other connections. Love the Sword of Hime cover. Talking about Ichigo getting caught up. This is something that we'd actually see. Ichigo getting caught in these conflicts. It's not as bad as like Goku getting caught in conflicts. God, we got so much like Goku gives Cell the Sensu bean because it wouldn't be fair kind of moments. But it is reminiscent of that, right? The idea that Ichigo's here for a much bigger and more important mission, but he gets caught in this conflict with Ganshu because he's personally engaged. And we would see that again in the Arankar arc, right? Where he gets caught in all these interpersonal conflicts. So much so that he becomes a hollow and like almost murders Uryu. So like I think this is something that Ichigo struggles with, is that he cares a lot, so much so that he can lose sight of what's significant. And I mean if anything, that speaks back to his childhood, right? Like, he saw this person he was concerned about, that he thought was a child that was going to drown. He ran out to them because they were alone and they were on the bank, but it turned out to be Grand Fisher, and his mother died because of that. And so I think Ichigo can't help but have this almost like self-destructive care of others that blinds him to the reality of situations. And that's something that he grows from. That's something he matures from through the course of the series. But it's something that a place that he only really gets to with the help of all of his friends. And so it's neat that we see the seeds of that here. And I'm really grateful for Ganshu, of all people, for bringing that out this early. Anyway, of course, I love Yurichi. Yurichi's great. I mean, who doesn't love Yurichi? Yurichi's like top female characters of all manga of all time, I feel. There's a lot of people that feel like she gets over-sexualized later and that it's like problematic. I don't think so. Like, go listen to WAP. A woman can own her sexuality. Like, get out of here. Like, yeah, that's, the idea that maybe like the person who covers her transformation is Urahara and she loses control of herself because of something he can't. But like, there's other stuff going on there that I'll talk about whenever we get to the 1,000-Year Blood War. But needless to say, I don't think Yurichi has done dirty at any point in the series. She's always handled really respectfully, and she's always like a really competent and powerful, not just in the sense of like her physical prowess, but just in the way that she carries herself and the way that she's expressed character. So yeah, I'm trying to think of other things in the arms. What else is going on that's like kind of significant here? These guys never show up again, really. Obviously, Smokestack's going to be the whole deal. That this is the reason why they're out in the middle of nowhere is because this has to blast people off. The reason why it's so ramshackle is so that she can like set up shop and run off if she needs to. We do end up learning that like this device ends up being a pretty significant device, and maybe even a way that you could get into the what is it, like the palaces of the royal guard, right? Something like that. So there's like there's like significance here to like the Shiba family. I think like as much as it feels like it's tied to Kukaku Shiba, especially, I feel like the Shiba family itself like had this sort of thing generationally almost, right? But it's hard to tell, like, how old is Kukaku Shiba? How old is Hishin Shiba, right? How long have they been around? They're certainly not progenitors of the Shiba, like, family, but, how long has the Shiba family been around? Is it, because it used to be, like, one of the big noble houses, and it's not even more. And it's like, well, why was that one of the noble houses? Is it because they had these, like, techniques that they have? Is it because they had all this reishi manipulation, which made some prime candidates to mate with Quincy? But this is beside the point. Is it because they developed this huge cannon system, which allowed like this kind of navigation of the world in a way that couldn't be done otherwise? I don't know. And there are people that would say, "Oh, that's an example of the bad world building in Bleach," but I don't think so. I think it's evocative. It makes me think of things. I think poor world building is conclusive because it kills the potential for the mind to imagine. And the whole point of fiction is to imagine a world, right? It's to engage with this thing that is not real, this thing that is fiction, right? And for you to engage with it and think creatively about it. And whenever fiction is conclusive and expository to the point of being conclusive, no longer does it really engage me in the imagination that way. No longer do I have things to wonder about and a world to kind of imagine the fuller breadth of, because instead it's all contained. It's all been put in a little bubble, and it's perfectly defined. And I mean, I think that oof, it's a tangent. That's what happens with people a lot. They start dating somebody and they have the fiction of that person, but as the reality of that person comes closer into to them, as they have to engage more and more with the reality of the person, the fiction of them fades away. They realize they don't like that person as much anymore, which is really sad. What I'm saying is, if you're ever dating someone, don't engage with some fiction about who you think they are. Always respect the reality of who they are as a person, and the reason why you should be with someone is the reality of who they are. But we're talking about fiction right now, and the reason why you should enjoy fiction is because it is evocative, it is fictional, it is not real, it is not constrained by the hard limits of reality, right? And so the fact that all of this isn't functionally answered within the series is something that I actually appreciate, because Ichigo doesn't need those answers, not for his journey. Her nose is a lot like Ichigo's too, I feel. Like kind of closer to the face sort of nose. You'll see that in like the more detailed drawings of Ichigo. But keep in mind her nose. And of course, the longer hair reminds me a little bit of Mugetsu Ichigo as well, but that's just because it's longer, darker hair. I really like the way that she looks right here, with like the pipe and the hair obscuring one eye. I think this is a great look for her. But yeah, it's especially Ichigo is strong with like this kind of like V'd out nose, and it even has a little bit of those sort of markings that Ganju's gets. That sort of dithering or whatever you'd call it. You'll see it on Ganju's face, like these little stripes. You get that on Ichigo sometimes, I think. I could be completely losing my mind here. But it's interesting that, I mentioned it's kind of interesting that Ichigo does have a little bit more of the feminine looks of the Shiba clan, or the family. He starts to resemble his father more whenever he gets into adulthood. But Ichigo certainly has a good bit of Misaki in him, but he has a lot of Kaien and he has a lot of Kukaku, I feel. Not so much Ganju, obviously. Whereas you could definitely see the resemblance between Ganju, like in the sideburns and everything, and Ishin, and even in the way that they kind of carry themselves. They're these very over the top, goofy sort of characters. These very full of life characters, and you get a little bit of that in Ichigo too. That rough and tumbleness of them. So it's kind of neat. Of course, I love their exaggerated expressions to each other, and that surprise from Kukaku. But yeah, that's all I have for this one. If you notice anything else like that kind of relates to the rest of the series, do let me know. I'm interested in your takes on this too. But this is already going to be one of the longer ones, so I'll let you go. I do remind you that if you like the video, please give it a like. That's what the button's there for. If you don't like the video, well, leave me a bunch of comments letting me know how much it just frustrates you and runs you up the wall that I dare sully any other comic that you enjoy or whatever franchise, and that Bleach is garbage. Get a real hobby. As always, you can take your support further by supporting me on Patreon, where you can pay as much as you like to support this channel. Pay me $1 a month. Maybe I'll get better sound equipment soon. Who knows? But as it is, I really do appreciate everyone who does support me there on the Patreon. Right now you're seeing all of my supporters as of making this video there, and I really want to give a huge thanks to all of you. Teamwork makes the dream work, whatever they say. But what I say is, this has been Karakura Gold, reminding you that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.